Hello and welcome to the first video on this channel. For those of you that know from the other channel, welcome to this one. For those of you that don't, I'm Caden. So I thought the appropriate first video would be to talk about what to get started with modelling. Most reason for this is because I've lost my editing software and I can't get a new one. And I can't find a decent one anywhere. So I thought I'd start with this because it doesn't need editing really. So, most important thing you're going to want is one of these, a kit. This is one from Airfix, this is their starter set, and let me tell you, they make tons of these. So if you're into tanks, they've got tanks. If you're into aircraft, trust me, they have got aircraft. And a lot of them. So this is a lot of ones that Airfix produces. They do produce other ones as well, but inside each of these you get a very similar set of contents. Hopefully this one has all the contents in it. I might have stripped them out already. So what you get inside is so you get glue, paints. I wouldn't trust them personally, but to each their own. Instructions, decals, standard stuff, not too many decals usually, just to get the basics done, the occasional stencil, and then paintbrush. Once again, not great, but it does the job. And the most important bit is your plastic parts. Now, this is a great start for someone who's looking for a cheap kit just to crack on with. This one cost me £7 in Lidl. They do that twice a year, once in the summer, one at Christmas, so it's always a good way to get started if you want to get started around that time of year. Airfix also sells these on their website for slightly more. £11.99 they usually go for, but they've got a very similar, if not the same range. Might actually have some more going. But yeah, so every one of these kits includes 3 or 4 paints, some glue, and paintbrush. So it's a good place to start, but there's a lot more that goes into a kit. First thing you're going to want, some of these. These are just a cheap set of side cutters from Amtech. Any brand will do. You can find them on Amazon for a couple of quid. Next thing you're going to want to sort of go alongside that is a hobby knife. I've got a fair few of these now. Get a lot of different blade sizes for them. Make sure you get replacement blades. They're going to be really important because your blade's going to get dull quickly. And they come sharp. Oh, they come sharp. So, next most important thing is paintbrushes. The ones that you get in the kit aren't going to be that great. You get 1, maybe 2 if it's a bigger one, and they're usually quite sort of very mid-range, looking at size 4, so that's about in the middle of what you get. So you want some thin ones. I have some ultra thin ones here. These are for very fine detail painting, and literally they are tiny. But that's really for like ultra detail painting when you get a bit further into the hobby, I suppose. You don't have to worry about them straight away. Yeah, just some cheap paintbrushes will do. £2.50 a pack for these. They're absolutely grand. So the next thing is paints in that case. Paints are a tricky one. You get your standard acrylics, which are the same as the little pots you get with the Airfix starter kits. The starter kit paints aren't great, they have a very mixed reputation. But these from Vallejo, they're really good. Make sure to give them a little shape before you start, but other than that, they're pretty much ready to go with a little bit of water. The only thing you've got to watch out for is these. What these are designed for is to be used with an airbrush. They can be used with the paintbrush, but they're not great. So personally, I'd just stick with these model colour or whatever your preferred brand is when you become accustomed to that. And then there's enamels. I started out with enamels. Personally, I wouldn't have used them going back. I would have just avoided them because they can be a bit tricky to get started with. You've got to have thinners, specialised thinners, and it's a bit of a mess when you get started, so I wouldn't go down that route personally. the next thing you're going to want is glue. Now, glue comes in a variety of things. You get Tamiya Extra Thin, which comes in different varieties. There's quick setting, there's an odorless variety. There's loads. This is like magic for modelers. It's absolutely amazing. Then there is thin cement, but it's not extra thin. The difference between that is this has a needle in it. That allows it for very precise application, whereas this has a brush tip, which is designed to be, once you've put a model together and you're holding it together, then you run it down the seams. So I've got a model somewhere I can demonstrate on. This is starting work on a Piper cub. Is it Piper cub? It's PA18, sorry. Literally, just run it down where that seam line is. And if it's got any on it, this bottle's getting quite empty now. I need to replace this bottle. What happens is it just runs into that joint and glues everything nice and tight. That I'd fill about with loads of glue, which is always really quite a nice thing to have now. So, I suppose talking about, that's the other one actually. I went mentioning that. The third type of glue you can get is your standard poly cement, as Humbrol calls it. Don't touch this. It's good for small parts like landing gear, antennas and things, but if you're going to use it, get yourself some toothpicks. Literally all you're going to do is rip a bit of cardboard off the box and use a toothpick to apply it rather than straight out the tube, because it comes out incredibly thick and it's incredibly messy. It's just going to get everywhere and ruin your build, frankly. So what I use that for is this, which is literally just tiny cut up bits of the sprue and a load of this poly cement poured into a bottle together, mixed, and it creates a really nice filler. But that'll get into another video. That's a whole different topic. One household item you're going to want, which everyone has around the house, is a pair of scissors. Personally, a small set is best, but a big set will do the job, or even your hobby knife. You're mostly going to want to use these for cutting things like decals, because they're going to be a pain if you're trying to get them all off in one sheet. I personally hate trying to do that, but that's up to you. Next thing you're going to want is a cheap, what's that? It could be any set you want, but just some nail files. Once again, household item. Siblings or parents probably have them lying about. A couple of quid for a pack, if that, and they get your job done. Because when you cut a part off the sprue, you're not cutting the whole part off. So going back to PA18, if I was to cut this part off here, I don't want to cut right up to the edge. I want to cut a bit away from it. And then, once I've cut the whole part off, I will then go in with my hobby file and just take off those little bits on the end, because otherwise you're going to cut in too close and you risk cutting into the plastic. Literally, it's a 2-second job. You can do it with your hobby knife as well to cut the most off. So my other step is to cut it off, score down with a hobby knife, and then go in with a nail file just to finish the job off. It gives you a nice smooth surface to work with. It's also great for removing paint from plastic. If you pre-paint a lot of items, like on the cockpits, on the interiors and stuff, you're going to want to remove the paint to actually let the glue bond properly. One of the most important things, especially when it comes to things like interiors and antennas, is a set of tweezers. I have several sets of these. There's lots of different types you can get. You can get straight edge, there's needle nose sets, there's paddle tips, but the most important thing is just to have at least a set of tweezers, because trust me, they will change your life. They are a great thing to have, just for getting small parts into tight places, or for precisely applying small parts. And I suppose the last thing, no, I was wrong, that's not the last thing, it's these. The most essential thing to have, which you can literally find in a drawer somewhere, is just some cheap parts. any pots will do, you don't have to have lids. It's just some cheap pots that you can chuck water in or mix paints in, chuck thinners in, whatever, that you don't really need to worry about getting dirty and getting covered in stuff. But it doesn't have to be, you know, stuff that you buy. It can be recycling. You know, I mean, this holds water for garden, for whatever it is, sometimes mixing paints, whatever. And this is just off an old sweet container. Don't have to do nothing fancy, just have to get the job done. Now on to the actual last thing, is clothes pegs. These are a lifesaver when it comes to holding your models together, because really, you don't want to be sat there for an hour holding a model. It ruins the experience. Whereas these, you can just clip onto the side of the model, holds it in place for you, and you can leave it to dry while you go off and do other things, or you work on a different part of the model. They are an absolute lifesaver. Like I said, those, once again, fairly cheap. Get a couple of quid. My pack was £1.50 for 10, I think. So it's not bad at all. I think that's it for all the major essentials that you might need. I think there's anything more particularly essential, but on to the next bit is the next steps. So once you've built your first few kits, you know, your Airfix kits, whatever, you're going to want to move on a bit. You're going to want to get a bit more experienced. So the first thing you're going to want to get, when you start with bigger kits, is a drill and a set of drill bits. These are quite small detail drill bits, so you probably only need the larger sizes from this, and then maybe cut the larger ones. But this is essential. Most kits will have multiple different types of the model in them. So, you know, you might find that one kit sells two different versions of the Mark V Spitfire. It might be a Mark 5C and a Mark 5A. And sometimes that'll mean you have to drill holes out for certain elements. And this is absolutely essential. Once again, cut on Amazon. I've had this since I started the hobby. I bought this 3 years ago. So not since I started the hobby, but I've had it for a good while. Bought it about 3 years ago, and it still works just fine. Sure, it is a hand drill, nothing special. Cut on Amazon once again, and these were a couple of quid in my local boys, which is always a nice find. Next thing you're going to want is your solvents. So, solvent and a glue. So, decal fix is going to be an essential for creating highly detailed models. Pretty much what this does is it softens the decals and allows them, so whereas just with water, they'll sort of sit on top and they won't actually conform into the edges. This will allow you to soften them, and they will conform to all the little rivets and panel lines, things like that, make it look painted on effectively, or mostly look like it's painted on. And then there is clear fix. One of the biggest mistakes that I see modelers making is they just glue their canopies on like normal, and it is a huge mistake. This is what happens when you just glue your canopies on. You get what's called fogging. So this is where the clear plastic reacts with the glue, and it sort of basically goes opaque, and it looks absolutely awful. That was one of my first kits that I ever built. So this is before I knew all about fogging and everything. And I looked at it, I was like, that's not good. I hated it, really. This is one of my more recent kits. This is, you know, a good while after those. You can see I don't have the issue with the fogging. There's a bit of paint on there, I actually need to clean that off. But I don't have the issue with the fogging because instead what I used was my clear fix. Now, same deal with the large poly cement. Literally all you're going to do is just get a bit of a toothpick or barbecue stick, whatever you've got lying around, bit of sprue, whatever, and just put a little bit of this on the canopy or whatever clear part it is, sit it in place like normal and let it dry. Nothing much special, just it's a bit of a weaker bond, but it stops the fogging up, which is what matters the most. When you get really skilled, you'll be able to use normal cement to do it, but that is risky, and I still don't touch it to this day. Yeah, I suppose the last thing I'm going to suggest, not the last thing actually, never mind, is a set of these. These are called helping hands. Actually, all it is a magnifying glass and a couple of these crocodile clips attached to a moving bar. What this is great for is holding parts. So personally I use this for if I'm doing any wiring, or if I'm holding really fine details that I can't fit my hobby vise. That's something I'm getting to in a whole different, that's not something you really need to consider to start off with. Folds away nice and compact. This just sits on the edge of my desk out of sight until I need it. It's always a grand. I suppose then the last thing is thinners. It's going to get to the point where you're going to realise that you need to start getting to different paints, or you want to start doing better washes, things like that. And a set of thinners is going to do you absolute wonders. This isn't cellulose thinners anymore. There's a mix of thinners in here. This was just I needed some space in a jar, so I emptied the thinners into this bottle. Don't know what happened. You can get special made enamel thinners. I tend to, if I'm going to buy one, I'll buy for the brand. But any brand does do the job. You've got to be a bit careful with it. And these go with your enamel paints. Yeah, so I suppose the last note on that is kits. Obviously, I did mention earlier about these Airfix kits, but these are only so good. If you really want to get into modelling, my suggestion would be pick up one of these, maybe pick up two to probably get you in, make sure you're excited about it, and then go to a company called Tamiya. What you're going to pick up there is one of their 1/48 scale kits. My personal recommendation from what I've seen online and other people's opinions is their 1/48 Fairy Swordfish is a great beginner's kit. It's so big that you can get all the details nicely picked out and you can learn to do detailing work, but it's not so big that it takes up loads of space. And it is an absolute gem of a kit. And if you're really struggling for space, my genuine tip is just buy Royal Navy aircraft, or just any Navy aircraft. Most of them have folded wings, which is a great way to display if you're running out of space. So yeah, that's about all from me today. That's it for how you get into modelling and how you go from there. So I hope to see you in the next one. And once I get my software sorted out, I'll start building some kits. See you then.